Remember when Canadians could light up a cigarette anywhere, drive without seatbelts, and let kids ride freely in pickup truck beds? The 1970s were a time of freedoms we can barely imagine today, when personal choice trumped government regulation in nearly every aspect of daily life. What would our straight-laced modern selves think if they could see what was perfectly normal and totally legal in 1970s Canada? Coming in at number 8 on our countdown of things that were perfectly normal in 1970s Canada but would get you in serious trouble today: smoking anywhere and everywhere. It's hard to overstate just how omnipresent tobacco smoke was in the Canada of bell-bottoms and disco. That distinctive hazy blue cloud hung over every restaurant, every office, every shopping mall. Department stores like Eaton's and the Bay had ashtrays placed strategically throughout their floors. Movie theaters had special sections where the smoke would rise and dance in the projector's beam, creating an ethereal effect during the film. The sensory memory of that era is unmistakable. The sharp, acrid smell that clung to your clothes after a night out, the slight burn in your eyes after sitting too long in a smoke-filled room. Parents smoked with windows barely cracked while driving their children to school. University professors puffed away during lectures, their cigarettes perched precariously on the edges of wooden podiums. What seems utterly foreign to young Canadians today was the absolute normality of it all. Nobody complained, nobody moved away when someone lit up, and warnings about secondhand smoke were dismissed as overblown alarmism. At number 7, we find the once common practice of drinking and driving without severe penalties. While technically illegal in the 1970s, the enforcement and consequences were worlds apart from today's zero-tolerance approach. One for the road wasn't a joke. It was a literal farewell drink before driving home from the local pub or a friend's house party. Police officers who pulled over obviously intoxicated drivers often gave simple warnings or, at most, ensured they got home safely rather than pressing charges. The RCMP in rural communities might recognize a local resident weaving slightly on the drive home and simply follow them to ensure they made it to their driveway. Legal blood alcohol levels were nearly twice what they are now, and there was no immediate roadside license suspension, no vehicle impoundment, and certainly no ignition interlock devices. The consequences of this relaxed approach were devastating. The late 1970s saw annual traffic fatalities in Canada reach nearly 6,000 per year, with alcohol implicated in roughly half of those deaths. Yet drunk driving was often portrayed in Canadian media as comical rather than deadly, and those who did it regularly weren't seen as reckless or criminal, just perhaps a bit careless. For number 6, imagine climbing into your car in 1970s Canada. The first thing you'd notice is the absence of that automatic, ingrained behavior modern Canadians perform without thinking: reaching for the seatbelt. Until 1976, when Ontario became the first province to mandate seatbelt use, Canadians freely bounced around the interior of their massive Chevrolets and Fords without any restraint whatsoever. Children slid across smooth bench seats or stood up in the back, peering over their parents' shoulders on family road trips. Infants weren't secured in specially designed car seats, but were simply held in a parent's arms or placed in makeshift carriers on the seat. Transport Canada had required seat belts to be fitted in all new cars since the early 1970s, but they were frequently ignored, often tucked away in the crack of the seat or even deliberately disabled. The seatbelt was viewed not as essential safety equipment, but as an annoying government imposition. The soundscape of Canadian car journeys was distinctly different too. Absent was the warning chime of an unfastened seatbelt. Instead, the thrum of large displacement engines, the crackle of AM radio playing Gordon Lightfoot or Anne Murray, and the rush of wind through manually cranked-down windows created the soundtrack of Canadian road trips. Families would pile into station wagons for summer journeys to the cottage. Children sprawled across the cargo area playing travel games, their parents casually smoking up front, never giving a thought to the safety equipment gathering dust under their thighs. The cultural shift towards seatbelt use was slow and met with significant resistance. When Ontario introduced Canada's first mandatory seatbelt law in 1976, compliance was low and enforcement was minimal. Many Canadians viewed the law as government overreach, an infringement on personal freedom that exemplified what they saw as a troubling trend toward an overprotective nanny state. Letters to editors and newspapers across the country decried the legislation, with writers insisting they had the right to take personal risks if they chose. The controversy seems almost quaint from today's perspective, where seatbelt use is so normalized that most Canadians feel physically uncomfortable driving even a short distance unbelted. Number 5 on our countdown takes us to another freedom once enjoyed by Canadian youth that would be unthinkable today: purchasing alcohol as a teenager. In the early 1970s, provinces across Canada dramatically lowered their drinking ages from 21 to either 18 or 19. Manitoba made the change in 1970, with others quickly following suit. This meant high school seniors could legally purchase and consume alcohol, creating a unique cultural moment when teenagers and alcohol openly mixed in Canadian society. The neighborhood pub became a rite of passage for young Canadians, with local establishments filled with fresh-faced 18-year-olds nursing their first legal beers. The sensory experience of these environments was distinctive. The smell of draft beer spilled on wooden tables, cigarette smoke hanging in the air, the sound of glass bottles clinking against the bar top, and the sticky floors that testified to countless spilled drinks. Weekend house parties in suburban neighborhoods would see teenagers openly carrying cases of beer or bottles of liquor from their parents' cars without fear of legal consequences. Corner stores and rural gas stations had relaxed ID checking policies, if they checked at all. The cultural attitude toward youth drinking was fundamentally different. It was seen as a natural part of growing up, an expected phase of experimentation that was better conducted openly than driven underground. Number 4 transports us to rural Canada in the 1970s, where pickup trucks rumbled down dusty roads with their beds filled with passengers, often children and teenagers, feeling the wind whip through their hair as they held on tight around corners. This completely normal sight would now result in immediate tickets, potential vehicle impoundment, and possibly even child endangerment charges in most Canadian provinces. The sensory experience of riding in a truck bed was uniquely exhilarating. The vibration of the metal floor beneath you, the rush of air that made conversation nearly impossible, the smell of freshly cut hay, or the earthy aroma of just harvested potatoes if you were helping with farm work. You'd feel every bump and dip in the road directly through your body, creating a physical connection to the landscape that's impossible to replicate from inside a vehicle. Wayne Duchesne from Portage la Prairie still reminisces about harvest time in the mid-70s when he was 12. My cousins and I would ride in the back of my uncle's truck between the grain elevator and the fields. Sometimes 8 or 9 of us kids back there sitting on grain sacks, laughing and trying not to fall over when he took corners. That's how we learned to balance, to hold on, to look out for each other. Those truck rides are some of my favorite childhood memories, and it's sad my grandkids will never experience that freedom. At number 3, we find another once ubiquitous feature of Canadian life that has completely vanished: the cigarette vending machine. These mechanical dispensers of tobacco products were fixtures in restaurants, bowling alleys, hotel lobbies, and even some department stores. With their distinctive chunky buttons, the satisfying mechanical thunk as the pack dropped down, and the complete absence of age verification, they created a completely different relationship between young Canadians and tobacco. The vending machines themselves were distinctive pieces of commercial art. Their illuminated front panels displayed vibrant advertisements featuring the iconic branding of Canadian cigarette companies. The distinctive red and white of Players, the gold packaging of Benson and Hedges, or the bold typography of Du Maurier. Their chrome detailing made them fixtures in the social landscape, standing sentinel in dimly lit corners of establishments where Canadians gathered. Margaret Chen, who grew up in Vancouver's Chinatown, recalls how at age 13 in 1974, she would be sent to buy cigarettes for her grandfather from the vending machine at the local cafe. I'd walk in with a handful of quarters, pull the knob for a pack of number 7s, and walk out, Sometimes I'd get a cherry Coke while I was there. No one ever questioned it or thought it was strange. That was just how things worked. For young teenagers in the 1970s, these machines represented an easy way to access cigarettes without facing questions about their age. A child could be sent by parents to purchase cigarettes, or teenagers could pool their money to buy a pack to share. Behaviors that would trigger immediate intervention by concerned adults today. The casual attitude toward youth access to tobacco products would be unimaginable in contemporary Canada, where stringent age verification requirements, advertising bans, and plain packaging laws have transformed the landscape of tobacco sales. Number 2 reveals a practice that perfectly illustrates how dramatically Canadian attitudes toward child safety have evolved. Before the late 1980s, when provinces began introducing mandatory child car seat legislation, infants and young children in Canada were routinely transported with minimal restraint. Babies were often cradled in their mother's arms in the front passenger seat, a practice that would horrify modern parents and likely result in child endangerment charges today. The visual memory of this era is striking. Family photos often show infants perched on laps during car trips, or toddlers standing on the bench seats of massive station wagons, peering over their parents' shoulders at the road ahead. For slightly older children, the safety measure of choice was often simply to place them in the back seat with instructions to sit still, or at most to secure them with an adult seatbelt that was never designed for small bodies. Gloria Thompson, who raised 4 children in 1970s Winnipeg, remembers bringing her newborn daughter home from the hospital. The nurse helped me get comfortable in the front seat with the baby in my arms, tucked a blanket around us, and waved goodbye. That's just how it was done. Nobody thought twice about it. Today, hospitals won't allow new parents to leave without demonstrating proper installation of an approved car seat, symbolizing how dramatically our understanding of child safety has evolved. And finally, we arrive at number 1 on our countdown. The practice that perhaps best captures the dramatic reversal in Canadian law and culture over the past 5 decades: cannabis possession and use. Until October 17, 2018, possessing even a small amount of marijuana could result in criminal charges, potential jail time, and a permanent criminal record. Yet, in the 1970s, cannabis was a widespread and increasingly accepted part of Canadian counterculture and youth experience. The sweet, distinctive aroma of marijuana smoke was a common scent at concerts, college campuses, and park gatherings across the country. While technically illegal then too, enforcement varied widely and social attitudes were rapidly evolving. The smell of cannabis mingling with incense in basement apartments, the distinctive imagery of rolling papers and pipes displayed openly in head shops, and the coded language around its use were all part of the cultural fabric. James Mackenzie, who attended university in Montreal during the mid-70s, recalls how casual the attitude was toward cannabis. We'd sit on the steps of McGill's Arts Building, passing around joints between classes. Sometimes campus security would walk by and just shake their heads or tell us to be more discreet. It wasn't seen as a serious crime, more like a mild social transgression, like playing music too loudly. No one worries about having their future destroyed over a bit of weed. What's most remarkable is how completely the legal status has flipped. Activities that once risked criminal records are now legitimate business opportunities. The neighborhood dealer, once a shadowy figure operating on the margins of society, has been replaced by government-approved stores with uniformed staff and digital inventory systems. The same substance that could have landed a 1970s Canadian in jail is now advertised on billboards and sold in sleek retail environments with corporate branding and tax receipts. This transformation represents more than just a legal change. It embodies a fundamental shift in how Canadians understand personal freedom, government regulation, and public health. As we look back at these 8 now illegal activities from 1970s Canada, we can see not just legal changes, but the evolution of our national identity. Our attitudes toward risk, pleasure, safety, and individual choice have been profoundly transformed over just a few decades. The Canada of bell-bottoms and disco bears little resemblance to the Canada of today in how it regulates daily life. Yet, in that transformation, we can see both what we've gained in safety and public health, and perhaps what we've lost in personal freedom and individual responsibility. For better or worse, the casual, sometimes reckless spirit of 1970s Canadian life has given way to a more regulated, safety-conscious society, leaving these once normal activities as distant memories, illegal relics of a more freewheeling time.